Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Carlene Spry. I am the awards administrator for the Golden Crown Literary Awards, and I want to welcome you to the first ever series of Goldie Finalist Spotlights. Now, for those of you who are new to the Golden Crown Literary Society, the GCLS recognizes and rewards quality literary works about women who love women. We also provide learning opportunities, encouragement, and assistance to new and established writers. We do have a highly respected writing academy. We have an annual gathering of hundreds of readers, writers, publishers, and editors. And that's coming up in July. That's our annual conference. And we also have a monthly GCLS members only online book club. So we invite you to learn more about GCLS and perhaps even become a member by visiting our website at www.goldencrown.org. Now, we do have just a few housekeeping items before we get started. There will be some time at the end of the session for some Q&A with the authors, and we'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible. Please be sure to use the Zoom Q&A box to submit a question. You're also welcome to use chat to chat with each other. That's great. If you run into technical issues during this session, please log out of Zoom, log back into Zoom. That's usually going to resolve most of the issues. Okay, so that does it for announcements. We are thrilled to have Flashpoint Publications as our sponsor today. So let's take just a little bit of time to hear from our sponsor.
At Flashpoint Publications, it is our mission to bring LGBTQIA+ stories to life. In support of the growing multiracial and multi-age coalition of those who demand unbiased treatment and inclusion in all pursuits, we welcome you into our house. We support diversity within our works and welcome novels penned by and for all people. Flashpoint is a proud member of GCLS, and we wish to congratulate all the finalists, including our own authors, Tammy Bird and Kay Ayton. We hope to see everyone in person next year.
Flashpoint Publications, thank you so very much for your support. We are very, very appreciative. Now then, let's go ahead and get started. So let me introduce our authors today. We have Lynn Ames, who will be reading from her Anne Bannon Popular Choice shortlisted book, which is 46. And then we have Karen Williams, who will read from Coyote Blues, which is a finalist in paranormal, occult, and horror. Max Ellendale will read from Nocere, a finalist in erotic novels. So folks on the West Coast, hopefully that wakes you up a bit. And naturally, we're going to follow that up with a reading from a new adult shortlisted book, Breaking the Chains by Scarlett Knight. And then our final reading of the day will come from Annie McDonald's contemporary romance short novels shortlisted book, When Sparks Fly. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Lovely smiling faces. Let's go ahead and get started. And Lynn Ames, you're up.
Thank you, Carlene, and thank you guys all for being here. We are most grateful and very much looking forward to the conference and the Goldie Awards. Hope you all will be there. I'm going to read to you today from my Anne Bannon finalist, 46. 46 is the story of Masters. I'm the author of 16 novels. This is my 16th. So Emma McMasters is the first lesbian president of the United States. 46, of course, is the number of the president after the last president, if you want to call him that. In any event, so we meet Emma McMasters, who is she's just been elected president. This is going to be her speech accepting, the results of the election. And we're also going to meet Palmer Estes, who is the first 4-star lesbian general in the Army. Of course, she's not out at that moment, but you're going to learn all about Palmer as well. So I'm going to read to you from the beginning of this book right here, 46. She could hear them out there stamping their feet, clapping their hands, chanting her name, Emma, Emma. Emma, and her campaign slogan, United We Stand. She twisted the wedding band on her left ring finger. She didn't wear it for optics, but rather to honor her dead wife and their 31 years together. Heather had sacrificed everything, including her life, to support Emma's career. I wish you were here to see this. What was that, ma'am? Emma could see the makeup artist's eyebrows rise in question in her reflection in the mirror as she retouched the back of Emma's hair. Nothing. Nichelle Johnson swept into the makeshift green room. She carried a folder in her hand and wore a smile that was as wide as the Mississippi River Valley from which she hailed. She had joined Emma's staff back in the days when Emma was a wet behind the ears state senator from New York. Well, Madam President-elect, are you ready to face your door in public? Don't you Madam President-elect me, Nichelle. It's bad enough everyone else is saying it. From where I'm standing, you worked long and hard to earn that title. If I were you, I'd wear it with pride. Was that a pun from my always serious campaign manager and soon-to-be chief of staff? Was what a pun? Nichelle's features scrunched up in confusion. Wear it with pride, said to the first lesbian president-elect. Nichelle blinked. Yeah, I didn't think so. Emma stood and addressed the makeup artist. Thanks so much. I don't think I've ever looked this good before. Are you kidding me? I got to do makeup for the hottest president in history on one of the most important nights in our country's existence. The makeup artist swallowed hard as tears pricked her eyes and all pretense of lightheartedness melted away. I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't mean to be impertinent, but I should be thanking you. As someone who puts the T in LGBTQ, you make me proud to be an American again. You give me hope. Her voice faltered and she wiped away a tear. You are going to sage that place before you move in, right? Emma choked on a guffaw and cleared her throat. I hope you'll always be proud to be an American, and if I do something that makes you feel less than that while I'm in office, I hope you'll call me out on it. Oh, you can count on that, ma'am. Madam President-elect, we really do need to get going. Secret Service estimates there are up to 300,000 people out there. I hope they're not ruining the grass. That's what you're worried about? It's the great lawn in Central Park. It's iconic, and it's survived concerts by some of the biggest names in rock and roll. I don't want to be known as the one who destroyed a New York landmark. Emma winked, turned on her heels, smoothed the lines of her suit, and followed Nichelle into the wings at the side of the stage. Did David incorporate the changes I asked for in the speech? He did. And the updated version is what's loaded in the teleprompter? It is. Okay, Emma rolled her shoulders to release the tension. You're going to be great. They love you. 70 million of them voted for you. Largest number of popular votes ever amassed by a candidate of any party. It's not the ones who supported me I need to address tonight. It's the rest of the country. I'm their president, too. The night air was crisp, but the stars shone brightly and the temperature was warm enough that she'd eschewed a winter coat. Emma briefly closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. Snippets from the campaign trail scrolled like a highlight reel through her mind. The endless speeches, interviews, debates, and fundraisers, the late-night strategy sessions, the sleepless road trips, the concerns for her safety as death threats rolled in. But first and foremost, she saw the faces of the people she'd met along the way. They were white, black, and brown. They were gay, lesbian, straight, queer, bi, pan, and transgender. Each of them had a story they wanted to share with her, a need they hoped she would address. She would carry them all with her. She would lift them up and show them they mattered. This was her duty, her solemn oath. This was why she had wanted to be president. This was her life's purpose, to make a difference. It's time. Nichelle touched her gently on the arm as she handed her the folder. Where's the vice president-elect? He'll join you on stage as soon as your remarks conclude. Okay, I'm ready. Yes, you are. Nichelle signaled the speaker at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, the next president of the United States, Emma McMasters. And thus begins the story of Emma McMasters.
Yay! Wild applause from the audience, which unfortunately you can't hear, so I'm doing it for you. Thank you so much, Lynn. We are now going to move on to Karen F. Williams.
Okay. Well, I'm reading from Coyote Blues. This is my twist on the werewolf trope. Riley Dawson is a were-coyote. Born in the woods to unknown parents and adopted by a wealthy couple, she lived a privileged life until, at the age of 17, she fell in love with Fiona Bell, a preacher's daughter. Raging hormones, the full moon, and the pull of Fiona on her heartstrings triggered her first change. Unfortunately, her parents witnessed the horror and sent her away with a trust fund, never to return home again. 20 years have passed. Riley is now a psychotherapist, and Fiona, the mother of a 10-year-old girl, is trapped in a marriage with a severe narcissist. When she's referred for treatment and unexpectedly reunites with Riley, all the rules of the client-therapist relationship go out the window. In this scene from chapter 8, Riley, Fiona, and her daughter Edie are on a secret outing while Jim, the husband, is out of town. Fiona sat behind Edie on one orange kayak. Riley climbed on the other, and they pushed off, disrupting a swarm of dragonflies and slicing through the watery blooms of yellow lilies that spread their large green pads across the water's surface. They took their time crossing the lake, finally settling in a patch of cattails where they could float without drifting and enjoy the lunch Fiona had prepared. "This place is great," Edie said, holding a sandwich in one hand, binoculars in the other, until something caught her eye. "Hey guys, look, it's a snake." "That's a big one," Fiona said. Riley watched the water snakes swim along the bank. "Which are smarter, snakes or turtles?" she asked. "Turtles," Edie said without hesitation. Riley turned to Fiona, the expert, for confirmation. "She's right. The cobra would be an exception, but generally turtles are smarter, probably because their lives are more complicated. It's amazing, isn't it, how every animal is as smart as it needs to be in order to survive." But surviving and living were two different things, and it just tore Riley up to think Fiona and Edie were only surviving, not really free to live at all. Riley asked Edie about her new school, her favorite subjects while they ate, but Edie, who'd only seen Riley at the office, seemed more interested in knowing more about her. "Where do you live?" she asked. "Not far from here." "In a house?" "Yep." "Are you married?" "Edie," Fiona reprimanded, "where are your manners?" Riley laughed. "It's okay. No, I'm not married." "You live alone?" "I do." "Do you have pets?" Riley decided to bait her. "Just the coyotes who share my property." "Really?" Edie's face lit up. "I have a coyote too. She's beautiful." "Yeah, your mom mentioned that. Tell me more." "Well, sometimes at night she comes to my window when I'm saying my prayers, and we kind of talk." "Your coyote talks?" "Well, I talk. She mostly nods and listens. That's how we communicate." Fiona shot her a look of concern. Edie was getting a little too old for imaginary friends, and Riley wanted so bad to tell Fiona the coyote was real, that she was the coyote who'd been slinking around the farmhouse at night, keeping a safe eye on them. But of course she couldn't. "Does your dad know about your coyote?" "No way. He'd kill her." "How?" Riley asked, trying to estimate Jim's skill level. "He'd shoot her, or he'd set traps like he's planning on doing anyway." Fiona squirmed in her seat. "I know what you're thinking, Riley. How could I ever be with someone who kills for sport, right? It's so against my beliefs, but I'm not in a position to argue with him." "I hate him," Edie said. Riley expected Fiona to come to Jim's defense and say something like, "Don't say those things about your father," but she didn't. "Well, don't you worry about your coyote," Riley said. "She might end up outsmarting your dad. Coyotes are clever, you know. They don't call them tricksters for nothing." As if on cue, honking geese flew in, giving Riley an opportunity to lighten the conversation. "Whoa, look at that!" She pointed to the birds coming down, feet skidding across the water like airplanes on a landing strip. "Let's paddle out to them," Edie said. "Yeah, come on, Fiona," Riley teased. "I'll race you." Fiona shot her that old familiar look that told her all bets were on. They took off then, racing and laughing so hard at times that they paddled in circles. But when they reached the middle of the lake, they stopped, content to quietly float and observe the splendor of a dwindling day. The breeze was soft, the afternoon sun sparkling like diamonds dancing on the water. Fiona adjusted her glasses, leaned back on her elbows, her face tilted to the sky. Riley studied her, feeling lost in a wonderful dream. And this had always been her dream, to be with Fiona again. It appeared Fiona had the same thought, because in a low, soothing voice, she broke the silence and sang, "Merrily, merrily, 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 life is but a dream." The words hit Riley like an epiphany. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. A silly child song, sung a million times, but she heard the words now, really heard them for the first time. Lurking in those lyrics was a divine wisdom, she was sure. They seemed instructional, like an owner's manual for how best to live a pleasant life. And really, life was like a dream, wasn't it? Over before we knew it. So what was the point in always fretting, worrying, taking things so seriously? Struggling against the current, constantly fighting your way upstream would only weigh you down, sink your boat in the end. Perhaps the song was telling us to discover the path of least resistance, to allow ourselves the merriment of a gentle ride downstream. That's what Riley intended to do for Fiona and Edie. End the domestic nightmare, toss Jim overboard, turn their boat around, so they could row merrily down that stream in this life that is but a dream. All she needed now was a plan.
Outstanding. Yay, team. Thank you so much, Karen. Okay, let's move on to our next happy reader, and that is going to be Max Ellendale.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm Max, obviously, and I am kind of my own publishing company, I guess. I have 25 novels out right now. I tend to write edgy romance and crime thriller novels about women rising from the ashes of their experiences and thriving in the context of love and relationships. I'm going to be reading from Nocere, which is the 7th book in my 4-point universe. So this is the scene where Rosie first accepts Samira's forwardness and her interest in her. So, and it's told from Rosie's perspective. Thursday evening rolled around, and I texted Alex to remind her that I wouldn't be home after work. I made my way to Starbucks as promised, half an hour early, and while standing outside, I thought about bailing. I truly considered walking off down the street and never looking back. What was I even doing here? Are you planning to run off on me? Samira's voice startled me, and I jumped, gripping my purse close to my chest. No, she laughed, her hand falling to my forearm. Hi, Rose. Hi. The moment she touched me, my anxiety quelled, and I took note of her overwhelmingly beautiful presence. She didn't wear scrubs or hiking clothes. Instead, her black-on-black jeans and blouse combo stole my attention with the way it wrapped her fit frame. Her hair, down almost to her waist, drew my focus away from her hand that gripped me, up to her uniquely hazel eyes. She was, more than I noticed previously, beautiful. I didn't mean to scare you, she said, her voice soft. Will you have coffee with me? I nodded, and she ushered me into the store. Customers occupied the comfortable big chairs by the front window, so Samira led me to an empty table off to the side by the service counter. What would you like? She asked, setting her purse down on the chair when I hooked mine over the back of another. A latte? I can get it. It's okay. I'll put in our orders. You're sure you'd like a latte? She asked, her brows furrowing under the thick side-swept bangs. I'm sure, I nodded and sat down when she gestured to the table. Thank you. My nerves rattled around my stomach while I waited for her to return. A few of the uniformed officers from the precinct stopped in for coffee, but they didn't see me tucked away in the corner. Samira returned and set down the latte in front of me, and she gripped an iced drink that looked rather decadent. There you go, she said as she sat across from me. Thanks, I appreciate it. Of course. I appreciate you coming to talk to me. I nodded again and sipped my drink before holding the warm cup in my palms. I didn't know what to say to her, and I kept my focus on the steam rising from the small opening in the lid. Rose, she said, reaching across the table to give my forearm a squeeze again. Are you okay? You make me nervous, I blurted out. How come? Because of what you said to me. I glanced at her. That you're cute? She smiled and tilted her head to the side. Yeah, I said, gulping down the dry sensation in my mouth. I gripped the cup so tight that the lid popped right off, and a splash of hot liquid hit the back of my hand. A gasp left me, and I yanked my hand away as the snap of a brief burn lashed across my skin. Samira swept over to me, cupping my hands in hers with a slew of napkins. Easy, let me see. I choked on a sob, one born of embarrassment coupled with the lingering sting. My hands trembled as she wiped off my arm and sleeve, her eyes scanning my skin. You're okay, Rose. It's just a little welt, that's all. I nodded, and she turned my hand over to continue inspecting me. When she released me, her palm fell to the top of my head, holding me close to her, while she piled napkins on the small spill beside my cup. She fixed the lid, then crouched in front of me, taking both of my hands in hers. All good? I cleared my throat, nodding as I looked down at my barely blemished flesh. I'm sorry. There's nothing to apologize for. It scared you. Luckily, lattes aren't as hot as other drinks, she said, a soft smile parting her maroon painted lips. Her thumbs stroked the inside of my wrists, and under the gesture, I nearly melted in my chair. Warm, soothing tingles ran up my arms and over my shoulders as she captured me in an embrace. I messed this up too. First the hike, now this, I said, surrendering to the notion that I'd bumbled up everything so far. Nerves will make things less smooth, I'll admit, but you're at no fault, okay? I nodded and glanced at her. Thanks. I'm not good at this, talking to women or anyone really. She chuckled softly and gave my hands a squeeze. Who needs to talk when spilled coffee brings me this close to you? That's it. I'll leave it there.
Yay! Nice reading. Well done. Okay, thank you. So let's now go on, and we're going to hear from Scarlett Knight.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, I'm Scarlett Knight. It is an absolute honor and pleasure to be here today. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the Neon Fishnets, book 2. So this is the second book in the Neon Fishnets trilogy. It's a contemporary romance trilogy about an all-female rock band, so it's a lot of fun. And if you have not read book 1, Playing with Fire, something happens at the end of the novel, and it results in the band's lead guitarist and notorious bad girl, Raina Emerson, going to rehab for drug and alcohol abuse. So the excerpt I'm going to read today is from book 2, Breaking the Chains. And to set the scene, it's from the very beginning of the book when Raina is on an airplane returning home from her stint in rehab. Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. We are about to make our descent. As the pilot continued with the standard speech, I felt the pinpricks of anxiety travel up my spine. During my stay at the rehab center, I wasn't allowed any contact with the outside world for the first 30 days. After that, I could make a phone call once a week. I mostly talked with my family, but I also talked to Trish, our lead singer. I hadn't spoken with any of the rest of the band. Trish had been supportive, but not exactly warm. I knew in my gut that she didn't hate me, but since I was having trouble not hating myself, I tended to project all kinds of feelings on people that weren't necessarily true. For the last 2 weeks, I dreamed of coming home and meeting up with the band, and in those dreams, they all shunned me. Probably just fear expressing itself, but I was still nervous. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. Trish had told me she'd be sending Zach, one of our faithful bodyguards, to come and fetch me from the airport. He was going to take me back to my place where the girls had a little welcome home breakfast waiting for me. Even though I was nervous as hell to see them all again, I was also ready to prove to them that their faith in me was founded. I had messed up, but I'd make it up to them. They'd see. Once we landed, I turned on my cell phone and was bombarded by a gazillion texts and notifications. Ever since I'd gotten my phone back, the damn thing wouldn't quit buzzing. I'll get to all of you later, I muttered. I swiped all the notifications off the screen, found Zach's number, and texted him to make sure he was at the right gate. Hey man, Terminal C, gate 1130. He texted back immediately, and my heart fluttered with warmth and appreciation at his words. Hey, I'm at the right place. See you in a sec. Missed you, girl. I smiled, took my earbuds out, and pocketed my phone. After sliding my Nightmare Before Christmas Vans back onto my feet, I sat up straight and rolled my hoodie sleeves down over my tattoo-covered arms. Then I adjusted my skater hat and slid my hood on over it. It was partly to hide my identity, partly to hide my desperate need for a fresh blue dye job. Not surprisingly, there were no hair salons at rehab. Finally, I put on my sunglasses. If anybody recognized me on the plane, they didn't say anything. I was cool with that. Ready to get back home, I made my way through the gate, keeping my head down. Once I was off the plane, I looked up and easily spotted Zach in all his Viking-looking glory. The big man stood out in a crowd. I grinned from ear to ear and waved. When he noticed me, I think he smiled. It was hard to tell behind that gnarly ZZ Top-esque beard. God, it was good to see him. I opened my arms and ran to the dude who I'd loved for years like a big brother. He opened his arms too, and I crashed into his embrace, so grateful to be back home and to have this second chance at life. I didn't even care that my eyes were welling up with tears or that he was sniffling. I just held him, and he held me, and for a while the future was as bright as the sunrise through the window behind me. That is, until the paparazzi snapped a photo. I'd developed a sixth sense of sorts to hear that camera click over the years. And when I broke free of Zach's hug, sure as shit, the little fucker was standing less than a foot away, aiming an expensive-looking cannon my way. Zach didn't miss a beat. "Hey, wise guy, get out of here," he said. When the guy ignored him and took another picture, Zach reached out a muscular arm and grabbed the camera by the lens, yanking it from the man. "Hey, give that back," the weasel cried. "Not a chance. I'll give it to security before we leave. You can get it at the Lost and Found." "You can't do that." "Oh yeah? How's about I smash it right here instead?" He raised it over his head, then brought his arm down with force, but I knew it was a fake out. The photographer didn't and wildly waved his arms in protest. Wait, okay. I'll get it from the Lost and Found, please. I'm sorry to have bothered you. My apologies." "Ah, there's the polite journalist," Zach snorted. "Fucking vultures." He pointed a finger at the guy's feet. "You stand right there and don't move until we are out of sight. I'll be watching over my shoulder." He pointed at his own eyes and then at the man's. The photographer seemed so scrawny next to my bodyguard. I shrugged and cracked a side grin. After time, you got used to this, being in one of the world's hottest all-female rock bands, but it never got any less annoying. There was rarely ever any privacy. Even going out to the grocery store for some damn eggs could turn into an ordeal. Zach was right. Journalists could be vultures. Nevertheless, I shot the guy a peace sign. No sense in getting upset about what you couldn't change. And that's my excerpt.
Yay! Nicely done.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we have Annie McDonald.
Everyone, thank you. Thank you, Carlene, and thank you to the GCLS for supporting our literature. It's really great. When Sparks Fly is the second of what I hope will be a novel set in each of the provinces and territories in Canada, because that is where I'm from, proud Canadian. And stereotypically, I'm also a hockey fan, go Habs. When Sparks Fly is set in and around Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Luca McCaffrey was a rising young hockey star when a devastating body check ended her dreams of playing at the national level. Danny Waveney, Danielle, was the trainer and medic on duty at the rink that day. The two have now met later in life, and after a couple of lightly flirtatious encounters, Luca has offered to teach Danny to skate. This scene takes place at the arena. Luca stuck her head around the cinder block privacy wall, then sauntered into the dressing room, casually swinging a pair of guarded hockey skates, blade side up. "So you didn't chicken out?" "No, I didn't. My word is usually pretty good." Danny's eyes were wide and bright. She looked even better than Luca remembered. "A lot about you is pretty good," Luca replied, intentionally dropping her voice a half octave. "Didn't we talk about your lines, McCaffrey? I'd hoped you would have worked on them since that pretty face comment a few weeks back." "I stand by my lines, Danielle." Luca noticed with pleasure that in spite of the glib critique, Danny appeared to be blushing. Luca took a seat and watched with keen interest as Danny snuggled her feet into each skate and bent down to tie them up. "Hang on." Danny flew back in her seat, almost knocking her head into the cement wall. "What?" she cried, clutching her chest. Luca placed a hand on Danny's knee and drew a breath as if encouraging reciprocated calm. "Skating lesson number 1 is never, ever lace the left skate before the right." Danny examined her skates, then looked up. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you kidding me? You almost scared me into next week to tell me I'm not lacing my skates in the right order? Surely the order makes no difference." "It's tradition. Right makes might," Oh, so there's no real reason. Luck is real, Luca said, watching Danny abandon her left skate to fumble with the laces of the right. You're superstitious, McCaffrey? Maybe. I try not to disrupt the universal order of the cosmos when I can help it. Well, that's very conscientious of you, Danny smiled and shook her head. Almost every hockey player I've ever known has had some sort of crazy superstition. I knew a player who always wore a pair of blue skates on Sunday and on no other day, and another who spent an insane amount of time taping her stick with the precision rivaling that of a surgeon. Actually, I think she went on to be a surgeon. Luca enjoyed an ease with Danny that warmed her heart in spite of her efforts to guard it. May I? Luca asked softly, watching Danny's efforts with barely disguised amusement. It's important the skates be tight in just the right spots. Your toes will freeze if they're too tight, and your ankles will slide if they're too loose. We can't have that. Okay, show me what you can do. Danny felt the heat spread across her cheeks. Show me what you can do? Had she really said that out loud? Luca knelt in front of her and positioned Danny's extended skate between her knees. Once the boot was securely in place, Luca worked the laces from the bottom up, pulling and tightening diligently. Her fingers were muscled and nimble and sexy. At times, it looked as if Luca's hands were trembling, and Danny wondered if she was having similarly arousing thoughts about those fingers, tugging, stroking, sliding. Ow, Danny flinched. Sorry, Luca eased off on the pull. Let me know if there's too much pressure. They need to be snug, but you need a certain amount of flexibility too. With each tug, Luca looked up as if asking for consent to the pressure, and Danny was excited by each opportunity to look into Luca's eyes. It was evident by the sparkle that Luca was in her element. Once at the top of the skate's tongue, Luca looped the ends to a proper double bow and moved a hand behind Danny's calf, cradling it gently. Danny's breath caught at the warmth that moved instantly upward from where Luca was touching her. The sensation bolted straight to her belly where it swirled and set off a ripple between her legs. She instantly became self-conscious, wondering if Luca, kneeling so close, could feel the temperature change between them. How does that feel? There was simply no room for language. Instead, Danny cupped Luca's chin and lifted it, moving her thumb slowly along the scar below Luca's mouth. So many years ago, she'd held gauze carefully in place over this very wound. So many years ago, she had stared into these eyes. Now, she leaned forward and captured Luca's mouth with her own. A soft sigh escaped Luca's throat as Danny released her tenderly from the kiss. Luca rose up on her knees, leaning more closely. She gently caressed Danny's jawline before the touch of her satiny soft lips added another wave to the building surge. Untethered by fear, Danny allowed her deep longing to float in the kiss, wanting nothing more than to drown in the eddy of desire Luca was stirring deep within her. She felt the current begin to carry her off as her lips parted. That's it.
Nicely done. Yay. Let's have all of the authors come back. This was great, guys. And now here comes the scary part, everybody. Ah! Okay. So that was great. We had 5 really excellent readings, 5 really excellent books. I hope everybody noticed that I was putting links to purchase those books in the chat. So if you like the reading, click the links, go buy the books. Let's support these people who bring us this entertainment, this wonderment day in and day out. So please, please go buy the books. And remember, if you've got questions, go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. I see that you've started, so this is good. We will get to those. I'm going to start with a couple of my own, and then we will come back to them. So here is my first question. And Max, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
Okay. What is on your desk? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That is not my question. My question is, what was your favorite game as a child? It could be a board game. It could be any kind of game. What was your favorite game when you were a kid?
I have two.
Okay.
So The most fun game I used to play was Manhunt. I don't know if anybody's ever played Manhunt before. This may be a very New York thing where you and your friends, one of you is like one group is the cops and the other are the fugitives. And it's like a high tech, high speed hide and seek, except you're fugitives. So the intensity of it is through the roof, and you can evade and run. Hide and seek, you're like, you hide, you're found, you're done. Manhunt is literally you're being hunted down, and when you play flag football, you have the flags on you. We used to have bandanas, so you were only caught if your bandana was stolen. So that when we used to booby trap, like they had to get your flag. So if you climbed a tree and booby trapped the tree, they couldn't get you. The cops lost. So that was definitely my favorite game growing up was Manhunt. And a board game was Clue. I mean, 100%. 100%.
Okay.
I see the man said yes, a New York thing. Definitely a New York thing.
Okay. All right. It sounded very Hunger Games to me, which is actually kind of cool. That's actually kind of cool. Karen, how about you when you were a kid? Favorite game?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know if I really had a favorite, but what I really loved, and if you want to ask me what's on my desk too, marbles.
Aha.
Yeah, marbles. I kind of collect vintage ones, seriously collect them. But I always love playing marbles.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Cornhole too.
Yes. Cornhole. Annie, how about you?
It would have to be hockey. I played until I was too old to play anymore and had worn out my knees and shoulders. But big ice hockey fan.
Wow.
Love it.
Okay. Lynn?
How far back do you want to go?
As far back as you want to go. I mean, that's completely up to you.
I had a series of dolls. One of them was called Johnny West. He was a cowboy kind of guy, and I had General Custer, and I had this fort, and I pitted them all against each other, and then there was Jane, who was also there, and she kicked everybody's ass, of course. But when I was playing outside, I was mostly playing basketball or tennis.
Okay. And Scarlett?
I was thinking Twister. I used to love playing Twister, and my brothers and we got a Super Nintendo when we were little, so we played a lot of Mario, and there was a Lemmings game I really liked. But yeah, Twister was fun.
Yeah. I used to play Twister now and then. It's kind of hard being an only child to play Twister.
Oh, yeah. Oh no.
But sometimes I got some of my friends to play too. But I still had fun.
Yeah.
I had a weird childhood. I was an only child. I had Twister. I had a Barbie townhouse. Didn't have a Barbie. Figure that one out.
Oh dear.
I didn't want a Barbie. I didn't want the townhouse, but whatever. Okay, so let's look at the Q&A really quick, because wow, these people are really coming in with some of these questions. Okay, so everybody, what is your approach to that infamous writer's block? What is your approach to writer's block? Lynn, let's start with you on this one.
Don't hate me, but I've never had writer's block.
And now we all instantly hate you, but go ahead.
I tried. No, I never find myself truly blocked because, as anybody who writes knows, 90% of what you do is in your head. And so if I'm not actually writing words on the page, I'm thinking about things. And as long as I'm thinking about things, then I'm never truly blocked. And the closer I get to deadline, the less blocked I become. Oddly enough, it's like, oh my God, due to the editor in 20 days, and I have 30,000 more words to write. No problem. Sit down and write them. But in share, I'm not one of those people who writes, a certain word count every day. If I'm not inspired to write it, why would you be inspired to read it? So I sit down and write when I'm inspired to read it. Fortunately, as I said, I get more inspired the closer the deadline becomes real to me. And so right now the deadline is very real on what I'm working on, and I am really inspired.
Okay, great. Max, how about you? Do you experience writer's block, or are we going to hate you too?
Not in the same way. I never experienced writer's block in a sense of I can't write, or I don't have ideas, or I don't know what comes next. I always rephrase it as life block. So if I'm not feeling inspired to write what is going on in my life, and it's usually because I do have a full-time job as well. Usually it's something to do with work. It's usually something to do with, family or an illness or, something like that that gets in the way of me settling into that inspirational experience. And I agree with what Lynn had said. It's for me, when I'm writing, I'm inspired and I'll drop 10,000 words in like 2 days and then not write for 2 days. I'm not a write 1,300 words in a day. It doesn't work for me. I am by the seat of my pants and by whatever my heart is into.
Okay. All right. Scarlett, how about you?
Yeah, in the beginning, I used to get a lot of writer's block, but I think part of it was just overthinking things. And I'd get an idea and I'd be so inspired, but then I'd start thinking, are people going to like this? Is this perfect? And so as I've written more novels, I've learned to just go with, okay, I like this idea. And the first draft, I mean, it's going to be terrible. So just get it down, get it written. And I think just writing on those days that you don't feel like writing, just sitting down. I know for me, if I only wrote whenever I felt like it, I probably wouldn't get much writing done. So, but I found that the more I write, the easier it flows and the more I can write. So I would say if you are an aspiring writer out there and you have writer's block, number one, just don't doubt yourself. Don't start overthinking it. And number two, just sit down and write. Even if it's just 30 minutes a day, the more you do it, I think the more it will flow.
Okay. All right. Annie, do you suffer from ever suffer from writer's block? It's hard to say.
Yeah, I guess technically I had writer's block until about my mid-50s. I didn't really write anything much, certainly nothing that was published. And it was because I was just judging my writing. So I actually cured that by going into NaNoWriMo one year, which is the National Novel Writing Month for people who know. It basically forces you to sit down and write 50,000 words in a month. And I sat down and I started writing and I refused to judge what I was writing. I just blurted it all out on the page. I knew that no one was ever going to read it. It was just an exercise in sort of letting go of that internal critic. And once I was at the end of it, at the end of November, I waited about 3 days and then I started writing my first book, and that was it.
Awesome.
So, and the other thing is, I don't know who writes to deadlines, but I have to wait until my first draft is complete before I even submit a proposal, because I don't want to have that artificial sort of, or not artificial, very real deadline to a publisher, because I think that would put me under too much pressure to enjoy the process of writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. And Karen, how about you?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I probably have to agree with Lynn in the sense that, yeah, I'm never blocked. I always, if I'm not writing, I'm thinking. So the story's there, and you're always, creating and processing. It's just that, some days the words come better than others. I mean, it's just like dancing. Sometimes you can go out and it's just like, wow, you're just on. It's just you're just right. And other times you're just kind of off kilter or something. Or sometimes you go to a party and you're super talkative, and other times it's just you can't think of anything to say. So I think that's how it is. But probably the beginning is the worst. Just setting your scenes and fleshing out your characters. And once those characters are fleshed out and they come to life, and the story is kind of set, it becomes a lot easier, where you can just wake up and say, wow, I wonder how it's going to go, or how it's going to turn out, or what I'm going to write. And you sit, and it's there because they kind of are telling you the story at that point.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. Okay, going back to the Q&A. And I'm going to leave this one. I'm not going to necessarily pick you. I'm going to let you kind of like raise your hand and say, I want to answer that one, damn it. How many of you find a cathartic release from writing? Go for it, Max. I saw your hand.
Yeah, I mean, For me, it's about that we have so much input all day long. You know, there's a lot of information being thrown at us that for me, it's all about, and there's things in the world that we see and people that we experience that we wish the outcome would be different. And I think that writing for me is a way of gaining mastery over the experiences that we have as humans. I write a lot of happily ever, actually all of mine in this series are happily ever afters, in spite of what they've been through. And that's not something we get all the time, but there are happily ever afters in the world. And the characters that I write are terribly traumatized because that's what I do. My books are not just about erotica or sex or romance at all. It's all about the recovery process of and surviving. So there's that piece for me as a catharsis, but I also hope that it's that way for my readers too.
Okay. Does anybody else want to add to that one?
I totally agree with Max. I also write romance with happy endings because sometimes life doesn't give you those happy endings. And so, you know, that's why I love romance, is that you know it's going to end well for the characters, and it's fun writing it and reading it.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on to some other questions. There are a lot in the Q&A, so I know we're not going to get to every single one of them for everybody to answer. So that's why I'm kind of doing this. So, okay, here's another one. Did the pandemic affect your writing last year?
Yeah.
Go for it, Annie. Talk to me.
Yeah, I was just going to say it. The only kind of moment that I had where I was back into kind of a bit of a block was during the pandemic, like at the beginning part of the pandemic, and I waited it out and I tried to just turn my attention to other things and waited until, you know, I felt sort of compelled to sit down at the computer again, because I think it really made emotions very raw, and sitting and trying to control your writing while you're having these emotions was very difficult. And I was separated from my wife for 7 months. So it was she was in another country, and you know, it really does challenge you to make it through that. Scarlett, you were gonna say?
No, I just, yes. I think just the state of the world, US politics, everything was so heavy, and it was just really hard to switch it off. So I did a little writing, but it was just, I think we were all just suffering from just the trauma of not knowing what was going to happen and if we were going to get sick, and some of us lost loved ones, and it was just a really tough year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Lynn.
Actually, I had somewhat of a unique experience because the book, when I was writing 46, I had been writing 46 before the pandemic began, and I finished it while the pandemic was underway. And I had no choice because it's a time-sensitive book. You know, it's about the next president of the United States who was, when I wrote the book, we didn't even know who the nominee was, who the Democratic nominee was. But it was in process. And so I knew that I had to finish the book. I had no choice. And that made me laser focused. Great for the beginning of the pandemic, because despite everything that was going on, I had to be laser focused. So I finished 46 and I released it to the world. And then I had to go back to the project that I'd been working on, which is a biography of Dot Wilkinson, the greatest catcher who ever played softball. And unfortunately, I had a very, unfortunately, I don't know. That has been a very different experience during the pandemic, because that one was hard to sit down and get focused, because like everybody else, you know, I was completely tied up with the political situation in the United States and with the pandemic and the people I'd lost, and, you know, losing pets, and all those things made it very hard during the pandemic. Yeah. After I'd finished 46, to sit back down and get focused and get back to work. So absolutely, I can't imagine not being affected by that experience. It's traumatic.
I had like a twofold response to it. In the beginning, I was actually, I believe, writing Nocere when everything kind of slammed down on us. So that book was stymied a little bit by this. But after I realized, and you know, I'm working in mental health, so we are, you know, essential workers. As soon as we realized what we were facing, I just started churning, that cathartic thing, just started churning out some books and like I did 4 in 2020, I think, or like 4 in that 12-month process, which isn't my normal. I usually do 2 to 3 in a year, or like the third one coming out at the end of the year. But I definitely dropped 4 novels much more quickly. And I write some young adult and middle grade as myself and not as Max Ellendale. And those kind of rumbled on out too. So it was at first stymied, and then this just flooding of extra long novels, because I guess that's where I wanted to live.
Yeah.
Because living here was not so wonderful.
Yeah. I know from a reader's point of view, it was very interesting for me because I couldn't read anything new. I could only go back to my comfort reading, the stuff that I knew what was happening in the book. I knew what was going to happen in the book. There were no surprises coming from a blind corner, because with the pandemic and with the past administration, you woke up every morning going, okay, what fresh hell today? And I didn't want that from a book. I didn't want to have any surprises. So it's very interesting to see both sides of that. Karen, did you want to add to that? Did you have any?
Yeah, well, it was an awful time, for all of us, and especially for those who didn't make it out alive. It was like this awful game of musical chairs, and you just hoping to get a seat when the music stopped. And so thankfully, those of us here did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I usually divide my time between New York City and the country, rural Massachusetts, Berkshires, where I am now. So I have a mom in the city, and she was COVID positive for 4 months, never became symptomatic, and all of that. My partner and I, we lost 2 beloved dogs, and so there was just other life going on, during the pandemic, but the only good thing is that I really love being in the country. So of course I couldn't visit my mom, so it was like, all right, I can leave my New York City place and just stay in the country, which is what I did. So being in the woods, for a year, and actually editing with my wonderful editor, Shelby Thrasher, who I think is here today, just going through the editing process and having the book come out. So, just all around bittersweet, but that is life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And here's a question, and everybody, I'm sorry, we're not going to get to all of these questions. You guys are asking questions like it's going out of style, and that's awesome. And so authors, if you want to jump into the Q&A and find any of those that you just want to type answers to, go for it. But one question here that I do want to throw out to you guys: what would you all recommend to prospective future LGBTQ themed writers? What do you have to say to that, new writer who's like, I'm going to write LGBTQ? What advice do you have for them?
Go for it.
Be authentic, be well represented. The most important thing is LGBTQ plus, all alphabet is intersectional, and we can't forget that. We have to have everyone included, people of color, everything. It has to be there. Our trans brothers and sisters, our non-binaries folks, we need to have everybody as a part of literature. So that's my only advice, is to be as inclusive as you can, and remember intersectionality as an important marker going forward.
Okay. Anyone want to add? Go ahead, Annie.
I was just going to say, I don't know who said be authentic. I think it might have been you, Lynn. But I mean, I agree 100% with that. I think you have to be honest enough to write, your own truth, and not try to apply any kind of, any kind of guidelines on yourself. You have to really just write authentically.
Okay. And kind of tied into this, which is kind of nice, because we have a mix of self-published authors and authors with publishers. So do you have any tips for prospective writers who are looking for publishers, editors, that kind of thing? What advice do you give to someone who's like, I just don't know what to do. I have this
Your
book,
homework,
but
what you should do.
okay.
Your
And
homework, which is to say, read heavily what each publisher publishes, read what they do, and try to find the publisher whose style or whose business practices actually jive with what you do. And then when you read these books, make sure that you're looking in the front. Almost every author thanks their editor at some point. So if you see a book that you think is really well edited, you like it, you're looking at that, factor that into your consideration as well. And if you're thinking about self-publishing, I've been in both camps. So, I've got a little bit of both. I was originally published by a publisher, and now I have my own press I've had for 11 years now. If you're thinking about self-publishing, my advice to you is remember that you're not just an author, you're a business person. And if you're a business person, that means you better have a serious business model and be certain that that you have what it takes to succeed business-wise. Otherwise, you're going to cost yourself a lot of money without a lot of return on your investment. My best advice as a PR person to you is establish an audience first. And then if you are inclined to go out on your own, once you've had an established audience, it's much easier to move in that direction than it is to start in that direction.
Second. I had the same journey. First traditional, and now I'm my own press. And you have to be prepared. You're not just an author, you're not just a writer, you are a business person. And you have to have your platform, and you have to have who you are, and you're also a writer. So be prepared to be both, not to discourage at all, because it's been the best. I love being a self-published author, and I was traditionally published for years before that. I love being a self-published author.
yeah, I think one of the things I've heard from a lot of people is, for some writers, publishers work better. For some writers, self-publishing works better. It's just there's one is not better than the other. It's just what works in your world. And I think it's kind of the same thing with publishers. What I've heard a lot of people say is, like Lynn said, do your homework, look at a publisher's catalog. What kind of books do they publish? And if you're like, well, I write poetry, and you look at a publisher's catalog and they don't have one single book of poetry there, that's probably not the publisher you want. So good advice, everybody. I like that a lot. And one final question, I think. Yeah, we've got time. Do what?
I believe in ghosts.
You do believe in ghosts. Okay, excellent.
An anonymous.
Yeah. So my question that I'm going to throw out there now is, and I think everybody's going to be interested in this, what's next? What's on the horizon? What can we expect from you next? And Karen, we're going to start with you.
Oh boy. Well, I'm kind of midstream with that right now. Another paranormal romance. This one involves a lich, which is kind of like a reverend. Any of you gamers out there will know what they are. Yeah. Kind of, walking, existing skeletons. But so it's a romance too, and it's about a woman who was set up on a blind date with a funeral director, and kind of just it's like the best date in the world. But when she finds out at the end, she just can't handle it. It's just kind of like, oh my God, like I know where her hands have been, I don't want them on me. And kind of blows her off. And then something, I don't want to give any spoilers, but something happens where she's kind of forced to see the funeral director again. And then something else is going to happen, and then it's going to take off.
Okay. Thank you. Lynn, how about you? What's next?
I've been working on this biography of Dot Wilkinson for going on a dozen years now, and I am in the home stretch writing. It's due to the editor at the end of June, so I'll be done by then, and it'll go to the editor. So that's what I'm working on. I'm working on Dot's biography. She'll turn 100 in October, God willing. And it would be lovely if I could release the book on her birthday, which I'm trying to do.
Wow.
That would be nice. I hope Dot is doing well. Max, what's next for you?
I'm continuing to grow the 4-Point universe. I'm actively working. I tend to thread the next main characters. I kind of drop little hints as to who it's going to be, and a bunch of my readers picked up on who it's going to be. So I'm going to be writing a story. It's the 13th book in the 4-Point universe tie-in. It's about Dr. Lauren Lewis, who is the kindest, most gentlest doctor ever, and it's a little more new agey than any other characters in the series. So it's a little less grounded in a crime thriller and much sweeter. After what I've put everyone through over the past couple of months, I think we'll go with some sweet. So we'll see.
Okay. And Scarlett, what do we have coming from you next?
Yeah, so for me, the third and final installment of the Neon Fishnets trilogy will be dropping, and I actually got a release date for that, and it's going to be June 17th. So I'm really excited to finish up that story, and I'm really excited for readers to see these two characters. It seems like the feedback is they've wanted these two characters, so here it is, and I hope that they really like it.
Okay, excellent. Annie, how about you?
Well, I just submitted a proposal for my third book. The first one was it was called Where We Are, and it was set in Alberta. When Sparks Fly, as you know, was set in Manitoba. The third one is set in Saskatchewan. So I'm kind of doing all the middle provinces of Canada first. And I had some great feedback actually on the whole geography element of things, that people didn't know a lot of things about Canada. So I really try to incorporate a lot about the diversity in the provinces and the history. And so I'm gonna hope that the third one is accepted.
Excellent. Great. Okay, so we're actually a little bit over time. I like to try to keep these to right around an hour so that I'm not taking up everybody's day, because it was very, very nice of you to take time out of your weekend to spend with us. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Go you guys, you're Goldie finalists.
Yeah.
That's pretty darned awesome. So our conference is going to be happening in July. It's going to be on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays throughout July. I hope that everybody that can hear my voice is going to register for the conference. Come join us. Come have some fun. At minimum, come to the award ceremony, because that's always a night of fun as well. I hope to see all of you at the award ceremony. And again, thank you. And to our audience, thank you so much for taking the time to come listen to these folks. Now, go click on those links, buy their books, so they can make money, become independently wealthy, and spend all their time writing more. Okay?
Thanks,
Excellent.
Colleen.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Well,
Thank you.
Cielo.
Bye. Thanks
Well.
for coming.
Here.